I said towards the beginning that I would explain why shows like Rick and Morty's approach to sex is more mature than the Helluverse, so I'll explain what I remember of the show, as I don't have time to rewatch everything. If I'm wrong about something, please feel free to correct me in the comments. The reason I'm choosing Rick and Morty as my main example is that the Helluverse shows, it is adult animation that touches on sex and kink for its jokes. But it is also a show that doesn't swear anywhere near as much as the Helluverse does, and it has incredibly immature potty humor quite often.
Haha, hamster and butt world weather is done, and now it's sports time. Coming up.
Yet somehow, Rick and Morty explores important themes and subjects as much more mature and open way than the other shows. I'm going to look at certain topics that are addressed in both series and compare them, explaining why one works where the other doesn't. Toxic relationships are quite different between the two shows. In Helluverse, abusers are pure evil with no nuance, even in non-sexual relationships, a far cry from Beatrice and Horseman, as he claims inspired Stella. Stella and Stolas' relationship is toxic and abusive, with Stella being the main antagonist, flat out stating she wants nothing more than to torment Stolas.
I like tormenting you. I want to keep reminding you of what you did.
Because Stella is so one-dimensionally evil, there's no humor in their toxicity. Meanwhile, if you look at Beth and Jerry, in Rick and Morty, they're both awful to each other, and often their gripes towards one another are valid. Jerry sucks. Beth is a narcissistic bitch. But they are practically addicted to one another at the expense of their kids.
Oh dear God, no. They're codependent! Run!
This dynamic between them allows for both of them to be the butt of the joke in their abusive natures, and you can often easily side with one or the other in most disputes. But their relationship grows and heals over time because there is still love there, and people are capable of changing. Stolas and Blitz, meanwhile, are toxic, but the relationship doesn't feel realistic, and it can be at times poorly handled to a point where it feels like characters are out of character for the sake of pining over the other. It feels like there's a lack of understanding at who should be at fault for what. The two are supposed to be terrible for one another, yet played out as meant to be together by the narrative. There's a power imbalance that makes their relationship unhealthy along with the strings that are attached to it, but this power imbalance is practically ignored in the nature of the narrative.
I don't look down on you! How many times do I... When have I ever... You speak just like that vile striker friend of yours.
Meanwhile, if you look at Rick and Unity, a planetary hive mind that wants to take over the universe and has a spicy fling with Rick, you see a relationship that is destructive to both parties because of how much they lose control with one another. When Unity is with Rick, she starts to lose her hold on her people, who are terrible without her control over them, and Rick can't stop binging with a whole planet's worth of people giving him attention. Unity recognizes the problem and leaves before she gets sucked too far into Rick's toxic orbit.
But I know how it goes with us. I lose who I am and become part of you. Because in a strange way, you're better at what I do without even trying. Yours. And nobody else's. Unity.
This is so devastating and eye-opening to Rick that soon after this, he attempts suicide. This took a really funny idea, a man having a fling with a hive mind-controlled planet, and turned it into one of the most emotionally devastating moments in the series, with a mature message on when to know when to let go if a relationship is destructive. What sort of lesson does Stolas and Blitz really teach? That if you make the ultimate sacrifice for one another, nothing else that was wrong before matters and you should be together? Not good. Healthy exploration of kink is good sex positivity, but how do these two shows hold up? Let's look at the bondage club scene in Hazbin Hotel. Characters are encouraged to explore a new kink, but it's turned down rather promptly. Characters show very little interest in trying anything new sexually. The joke is that kink is weird and disturbing, and only depraved sinners and demons would be into kink. In Helluva, Stolas awakens sexually but ultimately just explores bondage and masochism in a quid pro quo relationship that isn't healthy. In Rick and Morty, however, kink exploration is highly encouraged. You already heard about Rick hooking up with a hive mind, but Rick's sex life is full of exploration to a point where you can easily call him omnisexual. He's gotten with men, women, other genders, aliens, clones of himself, even a sentient planet that he theoretically could have impregnated. But that's kind of expected for Rick. More importantly, I wanted to talk about Beth and Jerry, who started going to therapy and learned to start exploring kink with each other. They started dipping their toes in the water with trying a threesome with an ocean deity. Get it? Dipping their toes in the water? But this leads to the eventual half polyamorous relationship they form with Space Beth. I say half because one of the Beths is a clone and they can't tell who is who, so Jerry really, is he in a threesome or is he just with two of his wife? This relationship and the exploration of sex ultimately leads to healthier bonds between Beth and Jerry. All the while it manages to be funny because of how unexpected it is. Kink exploration is not seen as gross or disturbing as bad, but as a healthy way to bond with a partner. How openly sex is addressed in either show, again, has pretty stark differences. In Helluverse, sex is always dirty or uncomfortable. For example, the fangirl short of Helluva, where being a weird horny neat fanfic writer grossed out the main character and was deserving of eternity in hell.
Oh, you're one of those.
Horny flirting is making people constantly uncomfortable. Being exposed to kink is always uncomfortable for some reason. Rick and Morty, meanwhile, people are extremely open about sex.
I'm gonna eat so much ass, you're gonna shit. Check this out, this is gonna be at the party. Oh, is that another ass? Don't mind if I
Oh, this will lead me across the room. Excuse me, miss. It appears that you have an uneaten ass. Allow me.
Sex comes up a lot in Rick and Morty, and it's very rarely shamed unless it's deserving of shame.
Let's make an intergenerational sandwich.
Oh my God, put some clothes on, for the love of God! For Pete's sake! This is disgusting! I'm gonna puke! I swear to God, I'm gonna puke!
Rick is very blunt and open about his sex life, and family, more or less, just accepts it. Sometimes, characters will react too much to information being shared at inappropriate times, like when the parents bring up sex at the breakfast table. But that's understandable. If anything, sex is celebrated in Rick and Morty, and it explores the many creative ways sex can be utilized in a multiverse setting, unlike Helluverse not utilizing the Hell setting. It's funny, in Hell, it feels like everyone is on the same page about sex and kink except for all the cast. To further prove my point, the main cast of Rick and Morty all love sex and are quite open about sex. Sex plays an important part in their lives, but is still just a thing they do, not who they are.
Damn, rule of threes, huh?
Oh, my vibrator. Sorry, honey. Our vibrator.
What? Do you want me to pull it out and show it to you?
Let's get the hell out of here.
Jesus Christ.
They only react negatively to learning things about each other's sex lives sometimes because that's how it is with family. You don't want to know what they do in the sheets. Unless you're a freak. Meanwhile, the characters in Helluverse that sex is important to, the sex is how they cope. It makes up their identity. The plot would not work without their sex lives, and other characters often look at them with pity or shame. And if they're not sexual characters, they're almost always sex repulsed or sex apathetic. There doesn't seem to be a healthy middle ground in sight. Speaking of kink in Hell, Rick and Morty referencing Hellraiser by having a bunch of dudes from a dimension of extreme masochism getting off on how cringe it feels to be around Jerry was mwah, chef's kiss. Good joke. And that showed more extreme hell-level kink than Helluverse has ever remotely dreamed of showing. Mivsy could learn a thing or two from Hellraiser. Next, I want to look at slut-shaming by comparing these two scenes and why one is more problematic than the other. Observe how Blitz talks to Verosika in our first encounter with her.
Oh yeah? I'm surprised they let your fat ass out of rehab. I could see you're still a drunken whore, clutching onto that Bielsa juice bottle like it's the last cock in hell.
Blitz, we know, is deflecting blame and projecting on her after he broke her heart and ditched her. But we also know that she's a literal succubus who's supposed to live and survive on sex, so what the hell is up with all the slut-shaming? It'd almost be like slut-shaming a trafficking victim. It's not something they can help or really choose. Blitz is also a main character, and while yes, he's meant to have a lot of toxic problems, no one really calls him out on the blatant sexism he has when it comes to degrading women.
Listen to your hoe, Mox.
Compare this scene to the slutty dragons in Rick and Morty.
I'll take care of this at once.
You slut dragon!
dragon! You slut!
Chill out, dude.
Okay, that's slut! You don't have to... Shame on you! Shame, you slutty, why the fuck does it feel like you're whipping me?
Because your soul got tangled in a dirty, slutty, slut soul!
The wizard is clearly an antagonist here, and the plot is about helping the slut dragon slut around free of the wizard's prude demands and no longer forced to soul bond monogamously. The show might be making fun of the dragons for being slutty, but in world, the antagonist is actually shaming them for it. The reason Morty doesn't want to see Balthramma anymore is because things got weird after Balthramma basically cheated on Morty by soul bonding with Rick. And after learning that and the highly sexual nature of soul bonding just made for an extremely uncomfortable relationship that crossed boundaries. Boundaries that Morty clearly set at the end.
Look, to be honest, I'm kind of grossed out with the sexual nature of how everything unfolded. I didn't know how sexual dragons were. I kind of just wanted to do some D&D stuff, you know?
And have a soul orgy with your sister and grandpa and every dragon we could find, yeah?
No, look, can you please just go? I really want to shower.
Sexual freedom and sleeping around isn't shamed by the show. It's in fact part of those nihilistic themes to enjoy everything life has to offer, including and especially sex. The way each show presents emasculation is very telling on Helluverse's misogyny. Let's compare the two butt-of-the-joke main cast males, Moxie and Jerry. Looking at Moxie, he's considered weak and pathetic because he's more empathetic, romantic, timid, gets pegged by his wife, needs to be rescued often, and is a suck-up. All considered feminine traits for males, which makes them sissies or losers by the standards of toxic masculinity. But these are not inherently negative traits for anyone to have. He's given insults that target his lack of masculinity, and he's put in dresses multiple times for gags or because he's forced.
Hey, what about my...
This ass is mine!
And in the Campers episode, he's basically a huge jealous attention whore compared to his super cool masculine wife, which felt very against his character thus far, but also is a negative stereotype for women. Moxie isn't a bad person. He's not even really what you'd call a loser. He's just feminine, and that's enough to make him a comedic relief character who gets shit on all the time. Let's also note that being feminine by nature isn't something that can or should just be fixed. Now, when you look at Jerry, why is he a pathetic loser? He's whiny, vindictive, spiteful, petty, a coward, an idiot, and instead of learning to do things himself, he uses weaponized incompetence to make everyone do everything for him.
You act like prey, but you're a predator. You use pity to lure in your victims. It's how you survive. I survive because I know everything. That snake survives because children wander off, and you survive because people think, oh, this poor piece of shit, he never gets a break. I can't stand the deafening silent wails of his wilting soul. I guess I'll hire him or marry him.
But these are all things that can and should be fixed about Jerry. These are all inherently negative traits no matter what gender you are. Gender roles have nothing to do with why Jerry is a loser, which means Jerry, unlike Moxie, can have actual character growth that isn't just manning up. He takes it to heart when Rick berates him for being a parasite. He thinks hard about who he needs to be when Beth and him split up. And for quite a few people, from season 1 to now, he's gone from their most hated character to their favorite one because of his meaningful growth. It also drastically changes the experience because with Jerry, when he's treated badly, it's because he deserves it, so it feels good to see him get what's coming to him. But with Moxie, you're just laughing at the fact that he's been shit on because he's a good person in a bad setting. It's not remotely the same sort of feeling. I talked before about how there seemed to be a subtle judgment of poly people in Helluverse, mainly Helluva Boss with Blitz's desire to have a threesome with Millie and Moxie, and to be an invasive, creepy guy. But in Rick and Morty, polyamory is explored in a surprisingly healthy and positive way. It starts with Jerry learning that his parents have a third partner that his dad likes to watch hook up with his mom, which Jerry is extremely judgmental of starting out. But later, a memory parasite invades Beth and Jerry's memories as Sleepy Gary, a third partner in their relationship. It seemed like there was a Sleepy Gary-shaped hole in Jerry's heart after that, because following therapy, Beth and Jerry started to experiment with a threesome, and of course, eventually they ended up in a throuple with Jerry and both Beths, and they're ultimately happier for it. Even BoJack Horseman has a huge poly relationship with Hollyhock's 7 dads who are shown as healthy and thriving and capable parents.
But then I thought, what if I'm not her father?
You're not her father.
You're her fathers. Yeah, I know. And there's 8 of you, and you each have your own cute little thing. I get it.
It's always so sad to me seeing poly people depicted as super horny people with zero boundaries. Boundaries? What the heck are boundaries? Zero boundaries, if not the cult version of polygamy, which is its own problem dealing with misogyny and making women property. Poly people being shown to be trying to get it on in other people's relationships because it's hot, that just ain't for me. I'm poly, and I've almost only ever pursued people I've known for a long time that I knew were interested in me and each other. I was done real dirty as a poly pansexual trans man in the Helluverse. Now it's time to talk about probably one of the most controversial type of jokes that was made in Helluverse. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but if not...
Because I'm having sex with everyone here! You know,
Hey, why don't you send a little message from me back to your limp dick boss?
don't touch that!
Foxy, don't let her access any of your holes!
I gotta go lie down now.
Many people agree these jokes were in poor taste, but when both shows also tried to talk about abuse seriously. The perpetrators of these 2 assaults face no consequences for their actions. It's supposed to just be seen as normal. They're not just trying to have their cake while eating it, but they thought they could light the cake on fire at the same time. Meanwhile, from what I can recall, I can only think of 2 rape-related incidents in Rick and Morty. The first being the love potion Morty tries to use on Jessica, which backfires and Cronenberg's the whole planet into wanting to have sexy times with Morty, except for his family, of course. The concept of the love potion isn't what's funny. What's funny is the way out of proportion consequences that came with it. The fact that Morty was trying to use a love potion was supposed to be scummy. But I think anyone who knows Rick and Morty well enough knows exactly what rape joke I'm talking about, and it's hardly a joke. That's when Mr. Jellybean tries to assault Morty, and Morty beats the shit out of him in a panic and runs out traumatized to his grandpa.
Let's go, please! Please, I just want to go home.
Listen, Morty, I just want a bunch of schmeckles. Why don't we use 25 of them to pay Slippery Stare here for a ride back to the village, and then we'll give the rest of the schmeckles to the villagers. Huh?
Really?
Sure, Morty, yeah. You know, a good adventure needs a good ending.
He doesn't tell Rick what happened, but Rick can put 2 and 2 together, and he doesn't leave without justifiably blowing up Mr. Jellybean. The act of assault was not remotely what was funny. It was shockingly taken very seriously, and it came with justified consequences towards the perpetrator. Morty was, well, mortified. And Rick showed he cared about Morty and perhaps even the well-being of other children. None of this was done in poor taste. Nothing about this said anything was funny about a guy, let alone a boy, being assaulted. This moment was visceral, and the rage Rick feels is a rage the audience should be feeling too. And the fact that this is basically the only rape joke I can think of really attests to how much they understand when and how to use sexual assault. And Morty is a butt of the joke character, just like Moxie and Serpentious. He's a loser, but he doesn't deserve to be raped. They do, apparently. What the fuck? I understand there is dark humor out there that gets away with having really perverted, lecherous characters. First thing that comes to mind is Quagmire's trafficking victims.
Quagmire, I am so sorry.
Don't worry about it.
We can go after them.
Don't worry about it. They're tagged. They're tagged. Just get me to the airport.
It only works because the joke is how over-the-top depraved Quagmire is. It's an unlikely extreme. And in the end, you see Quagmire as the bad, gross guy who has consequences, and the women and his victims who get to escape, and therefore fight back. It's still meant to be taken as something that is fucked up, but at the same time, is unrealistic. If we follow the rule of 3, and look at how this kind of joke is set up, it goes like this. Perpetrator gets opportunity to sexual access. Perpetrator commits extreme sexual harassment or is exposed as a sex offender, with a payoff, the perpetrator being denied or punished for their perversion, often severely in over-the-top ways. This makes the payoff satisfying and deserved. In anime, you have the classic guy is attracted to hot girl, guy pervs on hot girl punches him into the stratosphere. Setup, action, deserved consequence. Serpentius, meanwhile, the setup is that it looks like he was trying to make it look like he's not flirting with Cherry Bomb. He's awkwardly trying to flirt, and he's deflecting his offers by trying to say that he's offering things to the entire club instead of just Cherry Bomb. Then there's a twist. Instead of buying drinks, he offers sex to the whole club. The payoff is he gets dragged against his will by a bunch of people intending to have sex with him. Basically, the punchline is sexual assault, which isn't funny unless you have an immature sense of humor. No one is supposed to care. You're expected to laugh and brush it off like he did. He's fine, so it doesn't matter. Same with Moxie. He might be a bit traumatized, but it's not like traumatized. It's funny. It's the funny kind of traumatized, where he just needs to take a shower, you know? He's just a little dirty. Ugh. The most base form of rape joke that I've seen people get away with is the one old caveman bonking himself a new mate over the head. It's not funny because it's rape, it's funny because it's so contrastingly violent and primitive to modern courtship. Even Rick and Morty did it, but it was funny because the one attempting the assault gets beat to shit.
Oh, look at you! You a smart snake, huh? You using tools now, huh?
Those tools gonna turn into you manipulating the fabric of shit! Get over here, motherfucker!
What do you think you doing?
You don't fuck with time!
With time!
And even in that most basic form, the caveman capturing a mate joke generally needs something else to go along with it to make it work, such as a subverting expectations or including consequences, like History of the World Part 1, which demonstrated in a documentary style, which was already funny due to the disconnect from the content versus the narration. But then it gets even funnier when they repeat the joke by subverting it with a minor pun.
In the year 1 million BC, it is thought the first Homo sapien marriage occurred. It was shortly followed by the first homosexual marriage.
The Serpentius joke wouldn't have bothered anyone if it had a different payoff, something like, I'm having sex with everyone in this room. All eyes on him, he tries to save face. Next month! And then everyone goes, oh, or boo, and then you hear one single, woohoo, fuck yeah, next month! And then, to make it even funnier, have him between then and the time he dies, prepping like, I need to make it through next month. I owe so much sex. Which becomes cruel irony since he doesn't make it to the next month. The joke works because it also plays with his more innocent nature. You'd think that him deflecting to next month is an exit plan, but then you find out he's holding himself to it because he'd feel bad if he didn't. It works both for his character and for avoiding any non-consent issues. The last and more controversial type of joke on Rick and Morty's end, meanwhile, would be all the incest jokes. And since Rick and Morty is under scrutiny, I want to look at it first. Yes, Rick and Morty does make the occasional uncomfortable incest joke, and maybe for some people it's crossing a line. It doesn't happen nearly as often as people exaggerate it to. Last I looked, it was about 2 of every 12 episodes that had an incest joke. But I'd like to argue that The incest jokes in Rick and Morty are at least more tasteful than Helluva Boss, because Rick and Morty, in that, the intention is to shock and disgust. Most of the incest jokes involve people reacting negatively to said incest, and none of it was set up to be enticing. It's gross-out humor. That's just how gross-out humor works. You're supposed to feel gross. And the difference between gross-out humor and sexual assault humor is that you're supposed to be disgusted by gross-out humor. It's at your expense. But sexual assault jokes, especially against the loser character, are meant to laugh at the expense of the victim, which should never be the case. I think one reason people think it's fine is the whole rape culture issue of assuming the loser should consider themselves lucky for getting so much attention. But sexual assault being funny because it's happening to losers does not fly these days. You could get away with an immature rape joke like that in the early 2000s, but people have grown up since then. You know, except Vivzy, I guess. Anyways, if you take a look at Androlphus and Stella in Helluva Boss, it's very clear they're going for shock and arousal. The incest stuff is taboo and silly and a little bit sexy, judging it from Ozzy's expression here.
Eyes! Your Honor, speaking on behalf of my aggressively attractive sister,
Look at that face, he's definitely into it. Unhappy Campers also has an incest joke, but it was pretend incest, so I wouldn't say that entirely counts, but it was still framed in a way that it was meant to be risque rather than grotesque. So yeah, well, I know people really hate the incest jokes in Rick and Morty. At least Rick and Morty incest is actively reacted to as a bad thing in the narrative, while Helluva Boss just keeps happening with no repercussions because incest and royals in this funny cliche is a funny cliche, and we all know the main goal of Ivzy Pop shows is to cater to thirsty adults and teens who are into spicy taboo stuff like yaoi and bondage, and consent issues and incest. You can tell by how things are marketed in these shows, especially Helluva Boss, that they are Vivzy's horny self-made lemony fanfics. Things happen and exist to be hot constantly in the show. I want to make a side note about the incest stuff in Rick and Morty. Some people count the clone stuff as incest and the self-cest as incest. I don't really count it as that because, like, it's not a real thing that can happen. So, yeah, just, it's different context. It's not incest. It's still a little bit weird, yeah, but it's not as disturbing as, like, actual family members getting together, you know? Anyway, now that we've gotten to this point, I hope you've learned why this matters so much. Rape culture, misogyny, and implicit bias are all things that normalize harmful ideas that make people othered, and causes a lot of people, especially dumb teenagers, to think that rape and sexual assault as a punchline is funny. It can also subconsciously form negative views on sex revolving around shame, and doesn't display sex in healthier ways to contrast all the unhealthy ways it's reacted to and explored. I'm ashamed to say it, but I was one of those kids who had been desensitized to sex and abuse and casually used the word rape to shock people or as a little quirky thing to playfully threaten.
What about the fourth hole?
Rape their ear!
What about the fourth hole?
In their eye! Rape their eye rape! Eye rape! I've seen that! I've seen that! It's called skull fucking!
They could fight!
Am I saying rape jokes aren't allowed? Ooh, squeaky. Am I saying rape jokes aren't allowed? Not at all, but there are specific audiences for those kind of jokes. Mainly the type of jokes you'd only want to tell people you trust because they know you're joking. Not something you'd air to millions of people, many of which being influential teenagers. Not unless people know that's exactly what they're getting into and there's no low bar, but Vivzy wanted to address things like sexual abuse seriously, and you have to pick a lane. You can't get away with both. I don't think these shows are doomed. There are plenty of shows that start out janky and end up improving significantly once they form their identity. If Vivzy got more experienced writers and got input from actual kinksters, these could be salvaged, I'm sure. There's a lot Vivzy didn't realize she was doing because she never left the teen scene 2000s hot topic culture, and she didn't know where her sexuality was. There just needs to be more positive looks at sex in both series, and more focus on healing. Too many people have unhealthy mindsets surrounding sex, and if we're all more educated on the matter, there would be less pain and suffering in the world. Whew, this essay was a doozy, and I crammed on it to get it out before the Season 2 release potentially shifts gears in the right direction. I hope you enjoyed it. Drink water, self-care, and survive.